Hello, this is Jessica. We're going to do the second set of problems associated with Chapter 7. Here, XYZ just paid a dividend of $1.40. Again, remember from the first set of problems that the keywords just paid here means that we don't include them in our calculations. So $1.40 here would be D naught. The dividend is expected to grow at a constant rate of 7%. So it's going to grow at a constant rate forever. That means that we can use the constant growth rate model. Remember, the price today is equal to the next dividend payable divided by the required return minus the growth rate. The required return on the stock is 15%, so what is the value per share of the stock? We can first calculate D1. D1 is equal to the last dividend paid times 1 plus the growth rate. That's $1.40 times 1 plus the growth rate of 7%. So $1.40 times 1 plus 7% is $1.50. $1.50. So now we have all of the inputs necessary to calculate the value of this stock or the price today. So D1, $1.50. Divided by the required return is 15%. Again, this is a formula, so you have to use true percentages. You can't use whole numbers. Minus the growth rate of 7%. So 1.5, let me get out of this, sorry. 1.5 divided by 0.08 is equal to $18.75. Problem number 2. It's a little different. Sterling is currently trading for $80 per share. They're currently trading for this, so that is their price today. The stock is expected to have a year-end dividend of $4 per share. This dividend has not yet been paid, so that is D1. And it's expected to grow at a constant rate forever. The required return is 14%. What is the growth rate? So we're using our constant growth rate model here because dividends grow at a constant rate forever. Equal to the next dividend payable divided by the required return minus the growth rate. The price today is $80. The next dividend payable is $4. The required return is 14%, and we're wanting to know what the growth rate is. We can multiply both sides by the denominator. Multiply that out. It gets to 11.2 minus 80G is equal to 4. So we subtract 11.2 from both sides. And we get a negative 7.2. Now we divide both sides by negative 80 to get G. negative divided by 80 negative is 9%. So the growth rate is 9%. Number 3, your company just successfully completed some new R&D work. They expect earnings and dividends to grow at 50% this year and 25% next year, after which growth should be a constant 6%. The last dividend paid was $1. So we need to take this problem apart and figure out what we know and what we don't know. The last dividend paid was $1, so that would be D naught is equal to $1. So we can calculate D1. Oh, just a second. Let's put this on a timeline first. We want to know the value of the stock at time period 0. So from time 0 to time 1, dividends will grow at 50%. So the growth rate is 50%. From time 1 to time 2, dividends are going to grow at 25%. And from past time period 2, dividends are going to be a constant 6%. So the growth rate will be 6% forever after time period 2. So that means that we need to calculate the dividend for one period past where the dividends become constant. So D1 is equal to D naught times 1 plus the 50% growth rate. So $1.50. Dividend at time period 2 is $1.50 times 1 plus the growth rate of 25% to give you 1.875. And D3 is equal to the last dividend payable, 1.875, times 1 plus the growth rate of 6% to give you 1.9875. So after time period 2, dividends grow at a constant rate forever. So we can find the value of the stock at time period 2 using the constant growth rate model. So the price at time period 2 is equal to the next dividend payable, that would be dividend 3, divided by the required return minus the growth rate. So that's the 1.9875 divided by the required return. Here I did not give that to you. We'll assume that the required return is 13%. Divided by 13% minus the growth rate, and we use the growth rate, the constant growth rate, the 6%. So that gives you 28.393. So now that we know the value, the present value of all cash flows after time period 2, we can ignore all the cash flows that occur after time period 2. So we're ready to put this into our cash flow worksheet. So our cash flow worksheet. Cash flow at time period 0 is 0. There are no cash flows associated with time period 0. Cash flow at time period 1, there's only one payment then, and that is dividend 1, and that's $1.50. Cash flow at time period 2, there are two cash flows associated with time period 2. We have the dividend at time period 2, and we have the present value of all dividends thereafter, so the price at time period 2. Dividend 2 plus the price at time period 2. So 1.875 plus 28.393 to give you 30.268. Push the NPV button, Your discount rate is 13%. Enter in a whole number 13 and compute the net present value to give you the value of this stock today. This cash flow, create your cash flow worksheet. Cash flow at time period 0 is 0, so enter in the down arrow. Cash flow at time period 1 is $1.50. Enter down arrow twice because we can skip frequencies. And cash flow at time period 2 is 30.268. Enter. Now we push the NPV button, enter in the discount rate of 13%, down, and compute. $25.03 is the value of this stock today. For those of you with a graphing calculator, NPV, open parentheses, your discount rate, comma, cash flow time period 0, comma, prices, 1.5, comma, 30.268, close braces, close parentheses, and you should get 25.03. So number 4. A company just paid a dividend of $2. Already paid, that's D naught. The dividend will grow at 20% for the next 2 years, then at 7% forever. The required return is 12.3%. What is the value of this stock? Again, put this on a timeline, time period 0, and want to know the value. From time 0 to time 1, the growth rate is 20%. From time 1 to time 2, the growth rate is 20%. And from time period 2 to time period 3, the growth rate becomes a constant 7%. So we only have to calculate dividend values to one period past where the growth rate becomes constant. So D1 is equal to the last dividend paid, the $2, times 1 plus the 20% growth rate to give us $2.40. At time period 2, the dividend is equal to the $2.40 times 1 plus the 20% growth rate to give you $2.88. And the dividend at time period 3 is equal to the $2.88 times 1 plus the 7% growth rate to give you $3.08. Because growth rates become constant after time period 2, we can calculate the price of the stock at time period 2, which would be dividend 3 over R minus D. Dividend 3 is $3.08, divided by the required return of 12.3%, minus the growth rate, and we're using a constant growth rate, so the 7%. So we divide 3.08 by 5.3% to give you 58.11. So using your cash flow worksheet, cash flow at time period 0, 0. Cash flow at time period 1 is dividend 1, which is $2.40. And cash flow at time period 2 is the dividend 2 plus the price at time period 2. So 2.88 plus 58.11. $60.99. NPV. IY equals 12.3. Graphing calculator, we do 12.3, comma, cash flow at time period 0, comma, versus 2.4, comma, 60.99, close braces, close parentheses. Cleared worksheet. Cash flow at time period 1 is 2.4, enter, $5. And cash flow at time period 2 is $60.99, enter. NPV, interest rate is 12.3, and compute. So $50.50 is the value of the stock. Let me know if you have any additional questions, and I will post this file to Canvas as well.